Gunhild, I was wondering if we could start the conversation here. On the end point of the goal that we are all working towards, what is the food system of your dreams?
I love that you're starting out on a positive note, Natalie. So I think most people would agree that the food system we want is one that delivers healthy, safe and nutritious foods to everybody, everywhere, and do so in a way that protects nature and ensures a decent income for farmers and food producers along the value chain. And the good news is that the science now shows that it is possible. In fact, if we get it right on food, food can be the most powerful medicine to improve the health of people and planet, even as the population grows to 10 billion. But to get there, we need to do a couple of critical things. I mean, first, we need to shift what we produce and start growing a diversity of nutritious crops that we can eat directly. Because despite that there's more than 50,000 edible plants in the world, 60% of our energy comes from 3 crops only: corn, rice and wheat. And a lot of that goes to feeding our animals to produce meat or going to biofuel. Second, we need to shift to a way of growing food that protects and even regenerates nature and fights global warming in a way that ensures that farmers, fisherfolks and other food producers a decent living, because they must be viewed as providing us a public good. As much as they are feeding us, they have the capacity to capture and store carbon from the atmosphere, reverse biodiversity loss, and to also massively lower public spending on healthcare by providing foods that keep people healthy. I mean, like vegetables, legumes, nuts and fruits. And last but not least, today, 1/3 of everything we produce is lost or wasted. So we need something like a truly circular revolution along the entire value chain, making food loss and waste a thing of the past.
Well, that sounds like an incredibly inspiring future, and we'll soon speak about how to get there. But first, let's speak about what we eat, literally the food on the table. So a question that I've really been wanting to ask you, Gunhild, is what do you enjoy eating?
I'm a huge fan of trying new foods, and my favorite honestly keeps changing. But right now I'm quite obsessed with a dish from Johan Rockström's cookbook, which is really easy to make at home. It's stuffed squash with pomelo vinegar, and the squash is filled with beans, quinoa, onions, seeds and chili. It's filling, it's healthy, and most importantly, it's really delicious. And not only is it good for you, but it's also good for the planet, because beans and other legumes are not only the rock stars in the world of nutrition, but some of the best, most climate smart foods we can eat, and it's cheap. And of course, as any Norwegian, I also of course appreciate well-prepared fish, no matter what the sides are.
We've often heard you talk about the magic of the table, Gunhild, and that has often been your role in this. Why, for you, is it important to bring diverse voices around the table, to have a conversation, to share a meal, and to be part of the summit?
Our dysfunctional food system, I mean, where we are today, is caused by siloed thinking and siloed action for decades. For example, for too long, we have been thinking of how agriculture can increase GDP and create jobs, but not really serve its main function, which is to feed people healthily and do so in a sustainable way. And as a result of that, $700 billion of US in public agricultural subsidies go to support the production of just a few monocrops. Much of that goes to feed animals or to biofuel or the cheap ingredients in junk food. So we literally today subsidize what makes people sick and destroying our planet. So now we have the science to say that what's good for people tend to be better for the planet and vice versa. And that we can actually feed everyone enough healthy food, we can create new jobs and improve the lives of farmers while protecting the planet. But to do so, we need to see the big picture and we need to break down these silos. And of course, there are some trade-offs that we have to navigate. And last but not least, we have to work together. We have to collaborate. So we are all part of the food system, and so we all must come together to bring about that huge transformation that the world needs. So that is why it's so important to bring everybody around the table. And I'm going to bring up a Norwegian phrase that I've pointed to before, which is dugnad. And dugnad means coming together for the greater goods, everyone bringing their ideas and the tools that they muster. And we need something like a global dugnad now towards fixing food. And I think the UN Food Systems Summit is such a kickstart to this dugnad, bottom up and, of course, top down.
So you mentioned farmers who are, of course, heroes. But my question to you is, who are your food heroes?
That is a difficult question because there are so many. I mean, there is an incredible number of people who are dedicated and spend their entire lives to ensuring that we have enough and the right food to eat, sustainably produced. And sadly, many of these people are not fairly compensated. I mean, not even close. And a personal hero of mine who is engaged in the fight for the rights of farmer is Ajay Veer Jakar. And he's a citrus farmer from India. And through EAT, I've had the pleasure of working with Ajay and also through other boards. And Ajay, he fights for smallholder farmers who struggle to make enough money to buy the food they produce themselves. And I really agree with Ajay. I mean, we need to think about the whole process from farm to table, and we have to fight what many of the major food producing companies do, to only focus on pushing prices down in the supermarkets. This is not, this is done on the backs of poor farmers who are not fairly compensated. And Ajay, he fights with all his might to shift this focus through op-eds, through organizational work and mobilization. And now I'm very lucky to be able to work with Ajay as the vice chair for Action Track 2 for the UN Food Systems Summit to really bring in the voice of farmers when we talk about shifting consumption.
Talking about shifting consumption and food-related challenges, when you look out across the spectrum of food-related challenges, what are the ones that infuriate you most or drive you most crazy, or the ones that you most think should be changed?
There is much about our food system that should drive us mad, seriously. I mean, the fact that we produce more than enough calories to feed the world, but we waste 1/3, and that 3 billion people cannot afford a healthy diet is nothing but a massive tragedy. And at the same time, hunger is on the rise and obesity is skyrocketing, even amongst kids. And today, bad diets are killing more people than alcohol, tobacco, drugs, and unsafe sex combined. And for many, what is available out there and most convenient is junk food that is making people sick. And it's absurd for developing countries to adopt the worst practices of the West, importing such unhealthy diets. So this is a testament to the messed up dynamics in our food system that have to come to pass. And the right healthy choice must be available and affordable, both in developed and developing countries. And the lifestyle-related diseases that unhealthy food brings creates an unbearable cost for what we think of as cheap food. I mean, we talk about a price on carbon, but we must start talking about correctly pricing food, or the true cost of food. It's not even only about our health, it's also about the damage to our climate and to nature as a whole. And today, food systems create, in fact, more economic damage than what they generate in value. So when we measure the true cost of food, we see that in economic terms, society as a whole loses $2 trillion, which is an astounding number every year. And of course, this needs correcting.
Thank you so much for that powerful insight, Gunhild. And it's great that the UN have now acknowledged that there is no just and sustainable future without fixing food. Next year, at the UN Food Systems Summit, you're going to be leading an action track. So I have 2 questions for you. First of all, can you tell us what an action track is? And secondly, why do you think that you were headhunted for this position?
Well, let's start with the easy. An action track really just means a working group for a focus area or a core objective of the summit. And the 5 action tracks are really what we need to see. It's healthy food for all, it's shift to sustainable consumption, it's nature positive production, and it's good livelihoods, and it's of course resilience to shocks and pandemics. And for me and the rest of us at EAT, the focus area is shifting to sustainable consumption patterns. And when it comes to the role of chairing, well, it's a great honor for me and for EAT to be tasked with leading this action track. And I'm not really sure, but I think part of the reason was that the Food Systems Summit in many ways takes the EAT model of convening all the relevant stakeholders around the table to the next level. And at the UN, they convene all nations of the world, along with farmers, the food industry, city leaders, civil society, chefs and scientists around the same table. And I truly believe that this recipe is the need to generate ideas, workable solutions, and lasting change. And the world really needs to short-circuit the process of change for food systems because there is no time to wait.
Gunhild, so now you're in the hot seat. Can you tell us how, over the next couple of months, you're going to be setting about finding workable solutions to these issues?
The Food Systems Summit, the main objective is to define game-changing solutions and action that can really put food systems on a 10-year pathway towards achieving our global goals in 2030. And for Action Track 2, well, we have started to identify 3 main domains where we want to generate game-changing solutions. And the first is about food environments. In other words, it's the everyday surrounding where we as consumers access the food and drinks that's on offer. And that means our neighborhoods, our schools, our workplaces, etc. And then we have the second, which is food demand. And this is the factors that make us choose which foods we end up buying. And the third is on circularity, meaning the measures we must take to reduce food waste, packaging waste, etc. So we have now identified a wide range of inspiring leaders and practitioners to help us shape the solutions menu in these 3 areas. And their task is really to help us crowdsource a vast array of potential game changers from all over the world. And this work has just started, and I want to invite everyone who is watching EAT at home to join us in this effort. So we want to hear your thoughts on how to make our food choices healthier and more sustainable, whether that concerns the food served in your schools, the marketing of unhealthy foods and beverage, or the reduction of food waste in our households.
What would it take to make these solutions a reality, Gunhild?
Ultimately, it will take governments, it will take business, and not at least people power working together. But the first step for us is to identify the truly game-changing solutions. And then the second step is to convince both national and local governments and food companies, and of course we the people, to commit to these game-changing solutions and take action. And this is when the magic starts happening. The train gets rolling on new tracks in new directions.
So how can a high-level event like the UN Food Systems Summit really matter for everyday folk around the world?
I would say that it only matters if 2 things happen. First, we have to provide people everywhere with the opportunity to weigh in and to have their voices heard as the agenda for the summit takes shape. And these 5 action tracks provide key avenues for this to happen. But there will also be 3 rounds of dialogues in every country all over the world. And people should use that as an opportunity as well. So find out who is taking part in these dialogues and bring your ideas to them. And we would, of course, love to help. And second, the summit will matter if we succeed in generating real game-changing commitments for change. For example, if governments step up and commit to introducing new legislations or policy to curb the marketing of unhealthy foods and beverage, or if they prioritize getting healthy, fresh foods to schools and other public institutions, this will have a huge impact. And similarly, if financial institutions and banks decide to shift their investments away from the food products and practices that harm people and planet towards what is actually healthy and sustainable, this would have a massive impact too.
So a big question for a lot of our audience watching today: how can consumers help to fix food?
Well, that is a really important question, Natalie, because the food we are putting on our plates every day is actually the most important decision we are making for our health and for the planet in our everyday lives. And for all of us who have a choice, it's actually pretty simple. It's about eating real food, not too much, mostly plants, and of course, waste nothing. And in addition, it's important to demand change from governments and from food industry, so make your voice heard.
Thank you for those great insights and perspectives that you've shared with us. So lovely chatting with you.